John, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
You've issued a report, Outlook, for wood pellets. What is that report about?
It's about the quite quickly expanding wood pellet industry around the world. It's a market which has grown from almost nothing in the early 2000s to a market of nearly 30 million tonnes a year now in markets around the world. Markets tend to be in Europe in terms of demand. A lot of the supply, though, is coming out of North America, US South and British Columbia. And our report is looking at those markets, both on the supply and demand side, and looking at the cost of production, the price outlook, and trying to project these trends 5 to 10 years ahead. And it's a report which comes out 4 times a year, and it's like a sort of a constantly updated due diligence report.
So in your latest, you say that biomass is 0.6% of the EU primary energy source. What is the potential for it?
Well, by highlighting that number, 0.6% of global primary energy, or European primary energy, I'm not trying to imply that wood pellets are insignificant. What I was trying to show is that 80% of the remainder is fossil fuel. And over the next decades, by the end of the century, as a global energy industry, we need to move away from fossil fuels and replace them with something else. And wood pellets, are part of the solution. They're not everything by any means, and nobody is pretending that wood pellets will take over as a primary energy source for large sections of the world. That won't be the case. But by highlighting that number today, it just shows the potential of the market, or indeed the challenge for the global industry to come up with technologies which will enable fossil fuels to be phased out of the system.
So from 2009 to 2015, consumption has doubled. Is that a trend that will continue?
Not at that rate, no. The market has grown very rapidly over that period due to the arrival of some big chunks of demand. Demand in the pellet space, certainly in the industrial pellet area, which accounts for about 13 million tonnes a year of the 30 million tonnes. Demand in that space is very lumpy. It comes in large chunks. So if someone chooses to convert a 500 megawatt coal unit to burn wood pellets, that is equivalent of adding 2.5 million tonnes of pellet demand. So these are binary decisions. They either happen or they don't. And when they do happen, they add an awful lot of demand to the total in one large chunk. So what we're looking at in the future is a slight moderation of growth as those big opportunities to convert coal units slightly disappear, certainly in Europe, and will replace with a more distributed energy system, so that the demand will come in smaller chunks. There'll be more of them, but they'll be in smaller chunks, and that will moderate the growth rate a bit.
So in that context, it's a bridging fuel. What about the long term?
It's a bridging fuel as far as coal replacement is concerned, replacing coal with biomass in old coal stations. It prolongs the life of those coal stations and means that it saves the consumer lots of money, because there isn't, therefore, money being invested in very expensive new other technologies. So it repurposes old coal stations and extends their life. Their life isn't indefinite, and eventually they will fall off the system in 10, 20 years' time, and will be replaced by other technologies. Biomass will still have a role to play, certainly in terms of combined heat and power. In the heating sector, biomass is extremely beneficial. It's one of the only technologies that provide renewable heat, reliable renewable heat at a highly distributed way. It's easily stored, and so I think we'll see a lot of renewable heat being used both in space heating and also as replacement for industrial heating technologies, process heat. So replacing oil, for example, in chemical plants as a source of heat, process heat and electricity, and also in district heating networks. So there is a lot of opportunity in that area, and potentially also in the biochemical area. But ultimately, the role of pellets as a coal replacement will probably eventually come to an end.
The spot prices are continuing plummeting. Do you think that's a sustainable trend in the price?
I don't think so. There have been a number of factors which have driven the price down recently. One is that we've had 3 warm winters in Europe, and so we've had quite a lot of spillover from the heating sector into the industrial sector, as surpluses in the heating sector have tried to find an outlet for their pellets in the industrial sector. That's one reason. There have been delays in the rollout of new demand in Europe. A lot of projects that were anticipated a few years ago are now coming forward, but were expected to come forward 2 or 3 years ago. And so I think there will be a reaction on the demand side. Actually, there will be new demand coming through. At the same time, there will be less capacity, less manufacturing capacity. A lot of projects which had been anticipated on the supply side have also fallen away. So we're going to see a rebalancing of the market over the next 2 or 3 years as demand picks up again, as new projects come through, and as capacity growth is moderated.
What are your long-term projections?
I think if you're talking long term, in this business everything changes so quickly. In the long term, talking about the next 5 years, I think we're going to see quite a rapid growth in industrial pellet use. We have some big projects coming on in Europe. In the UK, there's a project by Lynmouth, EPH at Lynmouth. They're converting a coal station to burn biomass, wood pellets. There's another one in the UK, MGT Teesside, building a greenfield 300 megawatt combined heat and power plant. In Holland, there is the likelihood of new capacity coming forward as a result of the redesign of the SDE Plus support system. A few little bottlenecks still standing in the way, but the direction of travel there seems quite promising. There's the likelihood of a new power station in Belgium, the Langelo power station, which is seeking finance at the moment. And there's more capacity coming forward in Denmark, with Dong converting 2 network heating, district heating plants to burn pellets. So there's quite a lot of new demand coming through. And I see in the next 5 years there'll be significant growth. Thereafter, it's a question of looking at the tea leaves, and I think there will continue to be growth, although at a lower rate than we'll see over the next 5. But putting a number on it, I think, is not something for today.
John, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.